Ahoy, and welcome in to another exciting episode of Not Allowed to Die, your podcast about mental health, where I, Dan Migler, social worker and life enthusiast, talk about dilemmas that I'm seeing in my private practice as a therapist and my work as a school social worker. And I answer questions that you email into me at daniel.magler, that's Maigler, at live.com. Alongside me, as always, is Mariska, the three-toothed Patterdale Terrier, and she is not licking her paws. And when she's not licking her paws, we know what that means. It means that you are doing a great job of rating and reviewing the podcast. And Mariska really appreciates it because it helps get the word out there, but also it helps soothe her aching paws. I want to remind you that Paws for Patrick is created in part to draw attention. Not Allowed to Die is created in part to draw attention to Paws for Patrick, an organization that tries to help bring together animals and young people with mental health issues. So if you are a person with some mental health issues and you think you could benefit from an emotional support animal, then go to pawsforpatrick.org to learn more about how you might be paired with a wish granter who can help you acquire an animal or get a letter so that you can have an ESA in your apartment, dorm, etc. Today, Mariska and I are super excited because we're welcoming back a return guest who has talked to us before about PHPs and things like that. And now our friend Talia is back to discuss. Talia, what are we here to talk about today?
Chronic illness and mental health.
That's right. So again, like Talia, like most of my friends, doesn't, like life is complex. And often when we have one issue, we may have multiple issues. And so Talia was in my health issues group at Lake Forest High School when she was a student there. And so, one of the things we notice is that, a person can have anxiety, depression, and whatnot. But when they're also dealing with physical health issues, it can complicate things. So Talia, can you share a little bit about how that intersection has been challenging for you?
Yeah, so should I start off by just naming?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing what you're physically dealing with.
Yeah, so I have currently undiagnosed GI issues, which doctors are calling IBS, but it's not actually. And then I've been diagnosed with POTS, which is like a blood pressure, heart rate irregulation type thing. But now it looks like it's not maybe POTS, but we're calling it POTS right now. And then I have this super rare, literal 1 in a million tumor condition where benign tumors grow on my growth plates. So I have 4 tumors in my left hand, and I'm a lefty, so just my luck. But I had them partially removed when I was 7. Yeah. So that's basically me. There are more things, but that's all you really need to know.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that so many of my clients have dealt with is this undiagnosed and undiagnosable, it seems, GI issues. And they'll go to doctor after doctor, and it's so unclear. Is this a stomach thing? Is it a gallbladder thing? Is it a uterine thing? And all these doctors don't really seem to talk to each other. And then someone always trots out the whole, well, maybe it's just anxiety. So is that something that you've kind of experienced or?
Absolutely, 100%. I've seen 4 GI doctors, I believe, in the past 5 years, and every single one of them has been like, maybe it's your anxiety, because looking at your chart, we see that you have anxiety and you take medication for it, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm fully aware of that. But I can tell when I have an anxiety stomach ache and whatever else is actually going on. I know my body, and that's just not it. But then they are like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, pretty damn positive.
Well, and that's, I think the challenge is that we want doctors to be like geniuses who all know everything. And what, unfortunately, sometimes the more experience we have, it can actually make us less likely to come to the truth, especially when we're dealing with really rare conditions. And I think you as a person who already had and you were dealing with the tumor condition for a long time. So I think there's a part of you that realizes, well, no, sometimes this is something that the doctor has never seen before. But doctors, when they run into something that they haven't seen or they don't have an answer, we are disappointed. Like, we put a kind of an unfair expectation on doctors that they're always going to know what is going on. But, it's just frustrating when they kind of make it seem like, well, there's nothing I can do, so therefore your problem is kind of not really important.
Yeah. Doctors are told in medical school, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses.
Hmm.
Um,
And
which
not
is
zebras. Yeah.
yeah, and not zebras, which is basically saying, like, think of, like, the most common things, like, when you
Hmm.
hear someone has a stomach ache, like, and they're throwing up, "Oh, they have the stomach flu." Like,
Hmm.
you wouldn't jump to, like, stomach cancer, but, like, for for
For
me,
people, yeah, for a person who's actually a zebra is already at one aspect of your
mhm,
life. Yeah.
I am a zebra. For almost all my diagnoses are rare and undiagnosable. Um, and yeah, I've definitely found going to doctors, especially GI doctors, you go to them, and once they have ruled out all that they can, like, generally think of, they just say, "Well, we know it's not this, this, and this, so therefore you have IBS."
Hmm.
And, like, I guess some of my symptoms line up with IBS, but I tried 4 different IBS medications, and they either made things worse or didn't do anything. And I tried changing my diet, and that didn't do anything. And, like, I tried all these IBS, like, treatments, and nothing worked. So then in my mind, I'm like, can it really be IBS if it's not? Like, if the
Right.
typical treatments don't work.
When I think that's any diagnosis in general, like, the point of the diagnosis is to drive treatment. And so they're
Mhm.
giving you this, okay, we're going to treat this as if it is IBS, but then if your body is not responding to the treatments. I talked when you were in high school, I showed you the clip of from Golden Girls of B. Arthur's character, Dorothy. She is at a restaurant and she just goes off on this doctor because in the show she has fibromyalgia, and for anybody who has something like fibromyalgia, this chronic pain, it can feel like doctors are just sort of dismissing you, and or chronic fatigue syndrome, or any of these things that are we don't have a blood test for, we don't have any clear way of diagnosing. And I think in that clip she really stands up for herself well. In our society, most of medical health treatment was created by men. And we know that, from back in the days when, the more male medical students in Vienna were like killing women because they would go right from an autopsy to delivering a baby to whichever else, like, women's health and the female perspective is not considered as much. And so when we see these things, and they could be autoimmune diseases or they could be anything, from fibroids to anything else, the idea that, the medical establishment, it's kind of, again, because of male privilege, that just doesn't know how to handle these things. So how do you just not, and I know you do get discouraged sometimes, but how do you keep yourself from kind of getting too discouraged and just wanting to kind of give up when you're just kind of running into one stonewall after another of people not being able to help you?
Well, it definitely comes in waves, I'll say that, because I do have times where I just wanna give up and say, "You know what? Nobody knows what this is. There's nothing anyone can do," and I just, like, sorta spiral. But then there are other days where I'm like, and I know you love to remind me that the medical field is, like, constantly evolving, and that, like, one day it's gonna evolve enough to where it, like, can meet my needs. And so I guess just, like, I like to hold on to that hope that, like, yeah, we don't have a diagnosis, but, like, we don't have a diagnosis yet.
Hmm.
And just, like, holding on to that hope that that one day there will be one doctor and, like, I'll be able to get treatment.
And I think it's like, if for anyone who heard my episode with Kristen, super guest Kristen, who was talking about, wanting to have children with and her having bipolar disorder, and finding a doctor who will make you feel listened to. So I
Yeah.
think that's also a huge key, is making, not giving up and continuing to search for doctors until you find a doctor who will actually say, okay, I might not know what this is, but I'm not going to dismiss you. I'm going to make you feel heard and listened to. And that can be exhausting to try doctor after doctor until you find that,
Oh,
but
it's
you're
so
worth it.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but I
Doctors are
think
full of themselves, let me be honest. Like, I know I'm overgeneralizing, but the amount of doctors that are like, "No, but you're just a teenager, like, you wouldn't know."
right.
I'm like, "No, but I do."
So you already mentioned one of the ways for you, like how does anxiety, pain, or discomfort, like do you feel that in general, like more in your chest? Do you feel it more in your stomach? How does that one feel for you by comparison to how these undiagnosed GI pains? Like what's the difference and how can you pinpoint that?
Um, most of my, like, physical anxiety symptoms are, like, breathing related, so
Mm.
I'll get, like, short of breath and my chest will feel tight and, um, that sort of thing, but every once in a while, um, in, like, my upper abdomen, I guess, I get this, like, stomach pain and, like, sometimes I'll get nauseous, but, like, I am able to decipher, like, whether it's an anxiety stomach pain or a something else stomach pain.
Now, at your university, you've bonded with some other people who have like their own, whether you've found some friends with POTS, you found other people like that. Has that been a big help to you to feel like you're not alone by connecting to other people who are dealing with some of these physical health challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, my good friend who actually lives in my residence hall, shout out Kate, she's amazing. Um, like, there was one night when like, it was Halloween weekend, but I was in the middle of a huge flare and couldn't walk. So I couldn't go celebrate Halloween with everybody else, and Kate came down to my room, and she just, like, literally sat next to me while I cried, and just, like, having someone and she was like, "Yeah, no, I know this sucks." And I was like, "Yeah, because, like, life this is life. Like, this is my life." And she was like just, like, to have somebody that understands that is huge because the amount of people that are like they, like, try to understand, and I appreciate the effort, but, like, until you actually experience something similar, you're not gonna fully understand, and so to have friends or just, like, people I know that actually get it, it's, like, life-changing.
And I think you've done a great job of communicating, even with the people who don't have like physical health issues, to say, hey, this is like, I might be in a state where I can't really move or I can't do whichever, but like that doesn't mean it's an emergency. So I think
Yeah,
that's something else I want everyone who, like, for a lot of people, and you go through your time periods where you are, it's, you don't want to ever, like, nobody wants to be pitied. And we want people to have empathy for us, but not sympathy.
yeah.
And I know you hate feeling like you're a burden to any other people, but when the more I think that you communicate ahead of time, like what your needs might be and how people can support you, that empowers people to feel, and then it doesn't become a burden to people. And I think you've done a really great job of communicating. What, like, was that harder at first, and has that gotten easier over time, or does it just depend on the day for you?
It was definitely harder at first, and I feel like I've grown a lot in that area, but there are days when I'm like, "This is so much effort, like, why do I have to do it?" But I've gotten really, really lucky where I have a lot of good friends who will ask me like, "Hey, if this happens, what do you need from me?"
Hmm.
Because I was a little bit naive at the beginning of the school year, and I just assumed that everyone would know what to do if I had a POTS episode, and I had a not so great experience, and, like, people were kind of freaking out thinking that, like, I needed emergency help, and I wasn't in a state where I could, like, verbally say, "Hey, no, I'm fine. You guys can go. I just need to go to bed."
Hmm.
And they ended up, like, calling my mom and all that, which I appreciate. I appreciate the concern, but, like, it just wasn't needed at
Hmm.
the time. So after that, I kinda took it upon myself and realized that it is my responsibility to communicate my needs. So I set up my medical ID in my phone, which I highly, highly, highly recommend doing because I put like detailed instructions
Mhm.
So if something happens, I have my medical ID bracelet, which
Mhm.
if you like flip it over, well, it says my name and then it says POTS on it. And then if you flip it over, it says that there's more info on my phone, and then it has my mom's phone number. So like if something happens, they can look at my bracelet and then get like access my phone and then follow the detailed instructions that I put there. But um yeah.
Do you find it like, is it more comfortable for you to share with friends and other people about your physical health issues or about your emotional health issues? Or does it just depend on the day? It depends on the friend.
Well, that's a good question. I It definitely depends on the day and depends on the friend.
How about when going in? So as you go forward now, going into doctor's offices, are you gonna voluntarily, or do you voluntarily tell them like, "Hey, I know that this is, with this kind of pain, I also do have anxiety," but like beat them to the punch and just say, "But I know it's not this because my anxiety discomfort feels this way," or do you wait for them to kind of ask?
Um, so typically, when like you walk in and the nurse comes in and she like gets the chart open and then she's like, "Do you have any anxiety or depression?" And that's when I'll say, "Yes, I do, but I
Mhm.
know that they're not like that my health issues are not stemming from my mental health issues." So, I feel like just being really like upfront and like straightforward with them.
Mhm.
Like be blunt. It's okay. Like it's your health. So if that's what you got to do to get your point across, then
Yeah.
go for it.
You said one of the things you try when you are having like a negative emotional spiral related to like whether it's, well, particularly when you're thinking about your health and your future, you said it does kind of help to think about potential new technologies, things like that that are always developing. Is there anything else that you find helps you when you're getting in kind of a negative spiral about, particularly about health, or a feeling of loneliness or frustration about it? Is there anything else that really kind of helps you more emotionally?
Um, you know what? I'm still working on finding something that'll help a little bit more, but right now when I start to spiral like that, I just try and distract myself until I'm in a space where I can actually like process my feelings and like
Yeah,
I also journal. Like I just word vomit onto the pages or onto my computer screen, and I found that that helps too.
yeah. And I think for people getting distraction of any, journaling particularly good if it is 3 in the morning on a Tuesday and you don't want to wake anybody up. But at the same time, for you, I know, and I think for a lot of people, being with other people can really help to help
Yeah.
increase that distraction. I mean, increase that distraction rate. And I know you're a fan of hugs and things like that. And so I think people people getting that like some physical contact, again, to feel less isolated with these feelings.
Yeah. And I've um not not to flex, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better at like advocating for myself. And so if I am in a space where I'm spiraling and I know that I would benefit from being with somebody, then I've gotten pretty good at just reaching out and being like, "Hey, like, can you come over or can I come to you? Like, I just need a hug and somebody to sit next to."
Now before, Talia, before we got on, we were just discussing that this was going to be kind of a harder episode to get into because there's nothing. This is messy. It
Yeah.
isn't. There isn't a clear answer for when you're dealing with the intersection of health issues and mental health issues.
Mhm.
And we know that some health issues are more likely to lead to depression, anxiety, or whatnot. But it's also, I mean, anybody can have both. And most people who have an emotional health issue will probably, lives, our bodies are complex and things go wrong with them. And so they're likely to run into that. And again, what I liked one of the things you said. We're thinking, what do we want people to take away from this episode? And I think it's mostly just that you are not alone if you're dealing with this. So if anybody's listening to this and you're just so tired and you're so frustrated by feeling like you might be that zebra. You might be that there might only be 6 people in all of America or wherever you're listening to this who are dealing with your condition. But that doesn't mean your condition isn't important. And you can find people who, even if they don't have your exact thing, they can relate to you, they can provide you with empathy, and they can help you to go through this and feel like you don't have to go through it all on your own. Any other thoughts just on this topic before, as we're wrapping up?
Honestly, like, just you are not alone, and I understand your pain, and I feel ya. Like, I get it. It sucks. There's You can't sugarcoat it. Like, it
Mhm.
sucks, but, like, I guess just keep in mind that these things, like, fluctuate, and so, like, yeah, you're gonna have really awful days, but that doesn't mean that you won't have better days too.
And if you're dealing with doctors, even your therapist, anybody, and that they are making you feel that they are not hearing you, make sure you're being upfront with them about that.
Yeah, please don't be afraid to, like, speak up and advocate for yourself because it is genuinely life-changing. And
When I
one thing
think,
I found sorry.
oh, you're good.
One thing I've found helpful, like, going into doctor's appointments is making lists, on my phone of things that I wanna make sure I talk about because I now with all the medical stuff I've dealt with, I get super anxious going into doctor's appointments, and so I find that if I have all my thoughts in one spot, I can just, like, scroll through the list and be like, "Hey, this is happening. What can you tell me about this?" Or, like, "What do you think about this?" Just I found that to be helpful.
Yeah. And I guess I'll say, like, your doctors, your therapists, anyone, they may not intend to make you feel dismissed. They may have really great intentions. But if they're making you feel that way, it's important that you tell them so that they stop. And if they won't stop, then we need to find somebody new. Well, Talia, thank you so much for coming back and being, I think, our first repeat guest on Not Allowed to Die.
I'm honored.
And so if anyone has questions for Talia or for me, you can email me at daniel.nagler@live.com. And until we speak again, do whatever it takes to get you through this world. And remember, you are just not allowed to die.